Welcome to this edition of the program. I'm John Luck. Coming up, we'll mark 1 year in this pandemic and its effects on the school district and the town, but we do start off with some of the stories we've been working on, starting over at Bridgewater State. At the start of March, a survey involving BSU's logo had surprised people on social media that called the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm quoting, "a wild beast preying on your local community." This survey was accessed by students who are in an Introduction to Psychology class, and according to a statement from the university, was part of a larger investigation into pro and con reactions to issues such as COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter. According to a statement, the survey was approved by the university's Institutional Review Board. The question in the picture asks, in your opinion, what does your local community need to do to reduce the escalation of the Black Lives Matter movement? According to the Enterprise, which talked to a psychology professor at BSU, the course has students participate in research a faculty member is conducting, or they can do an alternative assignment, reading research and answering questions. According to the professor, a lot of the students do participate in the surveys. Students taking the survey could have received two different versions meant to elicit either a positive or negative response. This survey did get removed and nobody can access it, and after this had been on social media, BSU President Fred Clark and Provost Dr. Kareem Ismaili released a joint statement that reads in part, "Following a number of student complaints received, Bridgewater State University is reviewing the use of a survey developed as part of a class research project that was seeking to gain a deeper understanding of issues of racial discrimination and bias. As an institution that firmly stands with the Black Lives Matter movement, we are deeply sorry for the harm and pain this has caused our students and other members of our community. The survey was developed as part of an ongoing research project. The hypothetical vignette from the survey was meant to elicit predictable responses to better understand how differences in the framing of an issue share opinions, beliefs, and reactions. Both the researchers and the university strongly condemn the viewpoint articulated through the hypothetical vignette." This survey was accessed by students in Introduction to Psychology and was prefaced with considerable information about its purpose. The statement goes on to read, "The Presidential Task Force on Racial Justice, which began its work this past September in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, will soon be presenting a series of recommended actions that the university should take to ensure that its values of diversity, inclusion, and equity are included prominently in all aspects of the work of the institution." The Enterprise did talk to the person who created the survey, a former Massasoit student, and he said that the university had plenty of time to delete the survey before it went viral because he reportedly brought it to their attention on December 7th of last year. On March 10th, an updated statement from President Clark and Provost Ismaili said that the university continued its extensive review of this survey that again was approved by the Institutional Review Board. The statement says that they had met with the two student researchers, thoroughly reviewed the process by which the board approved the survey, conducted small group meetings with students of color to process the anguish caused by the situation, and attended a meeting of the Special Presidential Task Force on Racial Justice to provide updates of the review process. Turning our attention to the Town Council, which welcomed Bridgewater Police Chief Chris Del Monte to provide an update of department operations over the past year, a year that has been affected by the pandemic. Much like with other things in the world, the department's operations were affected as the court system had closed for a time, but responding to emergencies continued with minimal problems. The chief said that there were no staffing problems and very few people took time off from work, and even with some added obstacles, a few of the officers went through the police academy. Each year we tell you about the police dinner at the senior center, which didn't take place as people are used to. However, the department personnel delivered 280 meals to seniors, which the chief said they were proud to do. Officers in the department also collaborated with the Veterans Agent and placed flags out on Memorial Day. In the report to the council, it was revealed that a quarter of the personnel were affected by the virus at one time or another, which did have some impact at different times. This past year did throw some curveballs, but the police chief was extremely proud of the work put in by the officers of the Bridgewater Police Department every day.
I wanted to do justice to the men and women that are here, and I did speak briefly about what they've done. I have the good fortune that I am the face, if you will, but the work that gets done here by these men and women every single day is something I'm very impressed with. And I want to commend and recognize the men and women of this department. They've been tested physically and emotionally over the last 12 months, and they've proven themselves more than worthy. At no time did our doors close, ever, and no call ever went unanswered. Me personally, I'm proud to serve alongside such devoted police officers and true professionals. I think we owe, and I know I owe them a debt of gratitude for the character they've shown and the commitment they've demonstrated to this community. And we've been tested in the past, and we will be tested again in the future.
Acting Fire Chief McDermott presented the council a report on the past year for the department and said that the fire department received about 6,000 calls over the past year, which does average out to about 16 calls a day, and the chief said that was a decrease probably due to the lack of college students at BSU. During the meeting, cycle times for ambulances were said to be between an hour to 90 minutes and up to 2 hours for COVID calls to allow for proper cleaning and disinfecting. That also includes the transport of patients and providing paramedic services during the transport. Chief McDermott said that the department had a COVID-dedicated ambulance based on the time that a regular ambulance would be taken out of service. During his presentation, the acting chief pointed out the help of citizens in the community, including the CERT team here in Bridgewater, for their help in delivering Meals on Wheels, shopping for community members who couldn't leave their homes during the past year, and checking on the elderly during the summer months at senior housing and other small communities here in Bridgewater. He also pointed out what Assistant Town Manager Kim Williams had done over the past year in picking up PPE for the department. When it couldn't be acquired by the department, the chief said Kim went on a 50 to 60 mile route to pick it up, and he also thanked the local businesses for delivering PPE to the fire department. March 20th here in town was a display of emotions and tension. A Spring for Freedom rally was held at Legion Field, coinciding with a global response on restrictions implemented to combat COVID-19. Now, simultaneously, members of the Stand Up for Justice group held a vigil in honor of the one-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's passing. According to Bridgewater Police, some individuals, including a former member of the Stand Up for Justice group, left the comment and moved to Legion Field to counter-protest. After the rallies had ended, there was a verbal altercation that became physical, resulting in 3 people being arrested. 21-year-old Nicholas Colella of Saugus, 27-year-old Jake Zwalik of North Oxford, and 60-year-old Daniel O'Connell of Coventry, Rhode Island were all charged with assault and battery, disorderly conduct, and affray. Zwalik was also charged with resisting arrest and carrying a dangerous weapon while committing a breach of the peace. All 3 men were arraigned in Brockton District Court and will have their cases continue in May. Police Chief Chris Del Monte thanked residents for keeping peace, saying, quote, "I would like to thank the community for respecting the protesters' rights to peaceably assemble and the attendees who were cooperative during the events. I would also like to commend and thank the professional police officers from several area police departments who answered the call for mutual aid resources and ensured the safety of everyone involved." During citizens' comments, there were questions on the process of holding a gathering like the one at Legion Field and if that process was followed. The council discussed it in executive session, which isn't recorded for TV, but you can watch the council meetings on demand at btvaccess.com. The Commissioner of the state's Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Jeffrey Riley, provided a timeline for schools, including the BR School District, to reopen the doors for full in-person learning. The school committee discussed the dates and the process in bringing students back, and Superintendent Derek Swenson said the district will welcome K through grade 6 students back by April 5th and students in grades 7 through 12 back by April 26th. The 26th is the Monday after April vacation and 2 days before most students here in Massachusetts were expected to return to full in-person education. The committee unanimously voted to amend the district's masked social distancing to 3 feet instead of 4, but students will be required to be separated 6 feet apart during mask breaks and lunches. Turning to sports, and for the first time in over a year, Bridgewater State University has begun hosting sporting events. Spectators won't be allowed at the games, but that didn't put a damper on the happiness of both players and coaches. Lacrosse head coach Erica Adams and her squad will be preparing for an 11-game season, but the coach told the Brockton Enterprise, quote, "I think they recognize the importance of it and the opportunity that they have given that they didn't have it last year. They were all smiles, happy, excited, and just looking forward to our first contest," end quote. BSU Athletic Director Mary Beth Lamb has approached this upcoming altered season with cautious optimism. She tells the paper there's 2 wild cards in this season about being able to hopefully complete it, and that will be transportation. Each of the buses will be at 50% occupancy. The players will be double masked, and hopefully they will keep those masks on inside a bus. And then as all year long, their social lives will be a wild card. Hopefully they will take this seriously and just follow all the protocols so we can get through this season. In that report, you heard that the lacrosse team had an 11-game schedule. The lacrosse team's first scheduled game was canceled, so now they have a 10-game schedule. As with the softball team's first 4 games slated to take place against Eastern Nazarene, but the baseball team had played 3 games as of this recording and have a record of 1-2. The BR Trojans football team is 2 games into its spring season, and you can watch a back-and-forth game between BR running back Anthony Morrison and Durfee Junior running back Jason Hall, who BR coach Dan Bjorn called one of the best football players he's ever seen. You can watch the game on btvaccess.com. Now, before the season began, Brian Berard spoke with coach and athletic director at BR, Dan Bjorn, about a wide range of topics, including what is next for the coach that has been at the regional and on the sidelines for the past 2+ decades.
Everybody works hard, I don't have any concrete plans as far as coaching or anything. I just, I'm retiring as an athletic director, from my full-time position at Bridgewater, and I just personally don't believe I should stay on coaching football. I just think, and I'm not knocking people to do that. I think that's great, and I probably could. But it's time. It's time for someone as an athletic director and football coach to come into Bridgewater Raynham and replace me. And one thing I know, no one's irreplaceable. They're going to have football next year. They're going to have sports, and someone will. I say that to my football players all the time. We're going to play a game Friday night or Saturday with or without you. So if you don't want to do the right things in school or do the thing, and you don't want to follow the rules, life goes on. So, so the BR part of it, although I will, trust me, I'll follow it and keep, my eye on things and wish them well. I would love to coach football somewhere. I don't have to be a head coach. I really don't want to be a head coach. People don't realize being a head coach is a lot more difficult than everybody wants to be a head coach until you're a head coach. I wanted to be a head coach in the worst way. And now I was like, wow, just so many things. And unless you've done it, and I'm not talking just football, I'm talking any sport, unless you've been a head coach, and I don't care if it's, youth basketball team or whatever, it's different because everybody is, pulling at you. So my best time as a coach is the 2 hours out on the field where I can just coach and there's no distractions,
And you can watch the full interview with Coach Bjorn and Brian Berard on the BTV YouTube page. Just search BTV Access Corporation. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we look back at the pandemic and its effects in and around Bridgewater at home 1 year later.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? And now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Welcome back as we start our look back at the most unique 1 year span that many of us have ever seen. A lot of lives are changed in many different ways, from school to work to going out with friends. But when the pandemic began changing everybody's definition of normal, the first group this began to affect was the nursing home communities across the state and the country. To keep the patients and the staff safe, the doors were closed, which made for difficult situations as thousands of nursing home patients' lives were lost to the virus and families couldn't properly grieve given safety protocols. Members of the Bridgewater community came out to remember the lives affected and lost over the past year. Over the past year, more than 500,000 lives have been lost to COVID-19. Of those 500,000, over 130,000 were nursing home patients across the country, with over 4,000 here in Massachusetts. For the families that lost a loved one due to COVID, a normal funeral couldn't be held. To mark the 1 year since nursing homes made major changes, including many visitors not being able to go inside, Bridgewater was the site of a candlelight vigil to remember the lives lost due to the virus and to recognize the nursing home workers that have had their lives changed. Bridgewater resident Melinda Gripko-Reyes works with nursing homes, and she created this event after a tough year for her and her fellow nursing home co-workers.
There was a lot of staff at all of the facilities I go to that were invited to come, and a lot of the response was, I'm not ready to do that yet. There was a lot of what we would call post-traumatic stress by a lot of the people because of what we saw. So I think, when I would look in the eyes of my colleagues, we all had that same look of just wanting to cry, but we're holding on. And so it was a common bond between us without even saying a word, that this is terrible and I don't know how we're doing it.
Melinda's family helped set up the vigil, hanging signs that had quotes from family members of nursing home patients. Both Melinda and her husband David work along the front lines, and family has been important over the past year, but much like many others, they weren't able to see their family over most of the past 12 months.
I think the hardest part was that we couldn't see my granddaughters for a period of time because we were right in the thick of it with exposure all day, every day, even though we were wearing N95s and shields and gowning up. And then we couldn't see my dad. And that was a killer for him because, I don't know that he understood that we were so scared to give him the virus. So in one way, that was a parallel process to what my patients were going through. So I could relate a little bit better that, none of us were hugging, none of us were seeing each other, but we weren't locked in a room either. We could sit out on our steps. So that was the biggest difference.
Massachusetts Congressman Stephen Lynch was at the vigil and offered condolences and prayers to the families that lost loved ones over the past year. And although we couldn't physically reach out, gathering in the Common offered a bit of comfort during a difficult time.
Because of the circumstances of their passing, we weren't able to come together and to grieve as a family and as a community, nor will we be able to give comfort to one another during very difficult times. So that's why we're here today, why we're here tonight, really to come together, to recognize the loss that we have sustained, but also to reach out to each other. During the height of this pandemic, you weren't able to offer a warm embrace or a firm handshake in support of other families that were going through a very difficult time. So we're here tonight just to make up for that. I hope by coming here tonight, the one thing that we want to accomplish is to really share the burden that families have suffered alone, right? We want to, hopefully we'll take a little bit of that burden that they have carried alone for the loss of their loved ones. We want them to know that we grieve with them.
Since the vaccines began going into the arms of many seniors, we have seen videos on TV and social media of grandchildren finally being able to hug their grandparents, and Melinda said that there was a wide range of emotions when the videos began coming out.
The way that I reacted, and I think everybody did, was just to start to cry. And it was tears of joy. I think the first picture that I found a while back was when they did the hugging room. They did everybody in plastic, and so you could reach your arms through this device and actually hug somebody. And I remember thinking, it was so incredibly powerful. But when they started the hugging, I think a week or two ago, everybody was crying and nobody quite knew what to do. And then I also felt sad because a lot of my patients were seeing that happen in other places and they weren't getting to do it. So then that heartache was hard for us, so on one hand, you're feeling such joy. And on the other, you're saying, well, why can't we do it? When is it going to be our turn?
And hopefully their turn comes very soon. As you heard in the package, Stephen Lynch was in attendance in the Common, and he warned people to be very careful as we are not completely through this yet, and to continue being careful and protective of our loved ones. During the month of March, we here at BTV have shared our stories and thoughts about the pandemic over the past year. A year of Zoom calls, working from home, schooling from home, but there have been some positives taken from the past year, and so we share our stories at home 1 year later.
Hey everybody, it's Jeff Fowler. Welcome to my all-inclusive staycation site. It's been my bubble for the past year, and what a year it's been, right? But slowly but surely, okay, maybe more slowly but surely, we are getting back to normal or closer to normal, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
I remember this time last year I was up in Maine seeing steam trains for the first time in the snow. You know, I remember there were murmurs of COVID, but there wasn't really a huge concern about it. It was more, oh, it's over in China or Washington State. It won't affect us. And well, little did we know at the time we'd be heading down to Philadelphia for the BTV tournament down there and with basketball, and we'd come home and well, the world changed forever, really.
I think we made it back within a week or so of the travel restrictions taking place and all the safety protocols happening. So we came very close to, having some issues getting back into the state from Philadelphia.
Well, working from home has certainly been an eye-opening experience for me. I love the commute, I will say that. Going from my bedroom to my bedroom, no traffic lights, don't have to wait on a train, not stuck behind some car. It's a great commute.
If you watch the updates and the news programming from the past year, this has been my backdrop. Nothing more than a old room divider that I drag out here, put in my living room. My new set is very simple. I set up a camera in front of my recliner. I have a TV tray with a KitchenAid box and a microphone on top, but somehow it's worked over the past year.
With anything else, there are some positives. I did get to spend a lot of time with my dog, I guess new dog, so to speak. My girlfriend and I had gotten our dog Chester right before all this started, and we get to spend a lot of time with him because the best things you could do is just go outside and stay away from people. So what better to walk a dog through a park or play fetch with him, and that's what we did. And that was a big positive. And you know, another positive is I got to spend more time in some of my hobbies. I love trains, as has been repeated many times over the BTV air, and I get the time to start actually crafting my skills and working on some models of my own.
Some positives from this year is that it reminded us that everything can change at a moment's notice, so appreciate what you do have when you have it. It gave us the simplicity of just being with those we live with to simply make time for the things that matter. It also taught us to be creative in the ways we spend time with those who we don't live with. In my case, that meant virtual game nights. Over the holidays, we did cookie decorating parties, visits with Santa over Zoom. We had Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner over Zoom.
I have friends who are parents. I have friends who are teachers. And even a year later, they're still trying to figure out the balance of work and social life, all while trying to do this in a living room or your bedroom or your dining room all day. And I can only imagine how hard it is on parents and teachers, especially the parents that have to work all day and make sure that their kids are still getting their education. And I can only imagine how much stronger people have come out of this.
But there's a positive to come from this. I think it's simple. There's a lot of good in people. Getting to report on some of the good things that has happened, pen pals bridging seniors to college students, businesses coming out and helping those that need help in the toughest time for a lot of people. And just seeing that the community can get behind each other, helping out people that they don't even know, but knowing that, you know what, if you're having a tough time, there's going to be someone there to help you.
So really this year just reinforced that it's the simplest things that bring us the most joy. Meals with family, time with friends, hugs. And those are the things that I miss most and I'm looking forward to doing once we go back to normal. I'm also looking forward to the day where I'm not fearful of the unknown, of passing on this virus to someone I love. That potential is scary enough to me. And I really look forward to the day where we don't have to live with that fear all the time. And hopefully that's around the corner.
My hope is that we remember that it's okay to slow down once in a while. It's okay to allow some time and space for ourselves and for those we love and those we care about the most. And when we are able to cherish those times together, I think it's safe to say we have grown a new appreciation for being able to do the simple things. Stay safe and be kind to one another, and cheers to brighter days ahead.
On the Updates and Bridgewater Review, we've kept you updated on the impacts of the virus and the pandemic here in the community and its effects on the BR School District and the town. Now, some of the news was scary and concerning, but important during a year that changed our everyday lives. Birthday parties canceled, parades canceled, graduations canceled, and unfortunately so much more. Right now we're going to look back at the past year on the Updates and Bridgewater Review, and while things changed, there was one constant. The spirit of this town continued to shine. Governor Baker issued a state of emergency regarding the coronavirus.
We will probably have some more to deal with down the road, but I think from everything that I've read on an official basis, we will get through this, but I think it also reminds us that not only do we need to look out for ourselves, but look out for our neighbors as well.
In the middle of March 2020, there were more questions than answers when it came to the coronavirus. The global impacts were clear as cities and countries went into lockdown, with the toll of those affected skyrocketing by the day. Here in the US, what went from using hand sanitizer and covering your nose and mouth when sneezing turned into our everyday lives being affected regardless of people's age. On Tuesday, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker announced that schools here in the Bay State would be closed for the remainder of the school year, and that includes the BR School District. Over the past couple of weeks, the graduate and undergraduate commencement ceremonies were supposed to take place at Bridgewater State University, however both didn't happen due to the coronavirus pandemic.
What we will not do, and I'm sure that you agree, is let this pandemic define your time and our time together here at BSU.
The big concern, not just around the world, but of course the sports world, is the coronavirus. As March 11th is going to go down, Mary, it's really the day that the sports world stopped.
BR's girls basketball played in the Garden on Tuesday night. So, I mean, theoretically, the Garden wiped down everything in all those locker rooms. But if this person that had the coronavirus was in those visiting locker rooms, and now we have our girls basketball team was in the arena, I was in the arena, 4D Sports was in the arena, so now we're kind of like, well, that's kind of scary for us.
Looks like the MIAA will have to follow in the NCAA's footsteps and probably cancel the spring season. What does this mean for spring athletes? Well, it means that they've been stripped of their senior day activities. Their last chance at a state championship or a national title have come and gone, but quite possibly the worst feeling, the game that they played in last was the last of their career, and they didn't even know it.
Many things that were normal for us couldn't happen. Parties, 4th of July, going to concerts, and graduations are a few of the things that were canceled. That is until the can-do spirit of Bridgewater shined during a tough time.
We need to talk about graduation. The class of 2020.
Although students didn't have a chance to walk onto the football field at the high school with pomp and circumstance playing, they worked hard to get to this point.
Our class has worked extremely hard to get to this moment, and even though it is not exactly what we pictured, we still deserve to be celebrated for our strength and perseverance.
The annual 4th of July parade that we are accustomed to here in Bridgewater did not happen this year, but that didn't stop residents from celebrating in safe, distant ways, while also bringing a smile to many faces. These horns were sounded at the Bridgewater Nursing Home on the 4th in a car parade that visited staff and patients.
The spread of the novel coronavirus forced concert venues to shut down for what could be close to a year. But thanks to modern technology and the efforts of so many talented musicians, the show has gone on.
There's a lot of fear among musicians right now for the future, but there's also a lot of hope. And I, for one, am very excited to see where this new stage will lead us.
This is awesome. Wonderful. Thank you for trusting us to be able to come here in a safe way.
Parishioners have returned to St. Thomas Aquinas for services in the parking lot. This year has changed how we communicate with each other. While for many it has involved video conferencing to stay in touch, for some in delicate age groups it has been a test to avoid isolation and feeling lonely. A partnership between BSU and the Senior Center has helped bridge a generational gap one letter at a time.
I can see myself building a lifelong friendship with my pen pal.
The class of 2020!
A socially distant in-person graduation ceremony with elbow bumps was held on August 7th.
The class of 2020 will obviously go down in history for many different reasons, but they are the most resilient kiddos, I've come across in a long while.
Many people were going through a difficult time for many reasons, but as we have seen in the past, when help is needed, community helps community.
When the virus hit and the need for masks was evident, it was such an easy transition for us and other women who have not been on Dress a Girl but decided to join us also.
And you have to share whatever talent you've been given. And we all just happen to know how to sew. And so this is what we're doing. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a police officer, but I know how to sew. And so that's where my talents lie, and that's where my giving is.
The Priscos, along with help from a few of their friends, assembled 100 turkey dinners for residents of Bridgewater and others in communities that needed help during a tough time.
When COVID started out, I said to Nancy, go take a certain amount of money out of our savings, and if we go down, we're going down together, but nobody in Bridgewater is going to go hungry.
Mr. Prisco did have helpers to help deliver some holiday cheer, as on Tuesday, local Brownie Troop 67005, along with their parents, delivered ham dinners to area seniors. Stella Wagner had a 100th birthday celebration brought to her South Street home. Stella was in a small tent with a space heater, but this was an occasion that left everybody with a warm feeling. Before the new year began, Town Manager Michael Dutton and Town Council President Sean George were in a video that thanked Bridgewater residents for continuing to show that even though we're farther apart, residents continue to be there for one another and keeping each other as safe as possible.
We've always known Bridgewater is a caring and generous community, but over the past 10 months, you've taken it to a new level.
With the vaccine rolling out, there is renewed hope, not just locally, that we will continue working to return back to normal. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker announced distribution plans for the COVID-19 vaccine. The university is planning on returning to in-person classes coming up in the fall.
And all I would ask from parents and students and staff members that we collectively each and every day work together to make this the best year we possibly can for our kiddos, because that's what they require and that's what they deserve. So I think what we need to do is continue to be strong as families and schools and communities at large.
We're coming up on the one-year mark since education and how students learn was changed. The BR School District has seen a mix of hybrid and remote learning over the past year.
The teachers of BR have always stood on their head and gone out of their way to educate my children, and never once have they said, we can't do it. Our children in BR need us to say, I can, and we need to try to do that for them.
Joining me today is the town manager of Bridgewater, Michael Dutton, and the superintendent of the BR School District, Derek Swenson. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking a few minutes out of your time during a very busy time in your respective roles here in the community. So, Mr. Swenson, I want to start off with you because as restrictions and mandates started to take effect at the beginning of March last year, students and teachers had to go from full in-person learning to remote learning, and we did switch to hybrid at a point over the past year as well. As not just the superintendent here in town, but as a parent of the district, can you take us through the processes that you went through to, your decision-making over the past year? Because you had to make some important decisions very quickly early on.
Right. So and thank you, John, for allowing us this forum to discuss some of these topics. For us, we're coming on the one-year anniversary of the original shutdown on March 13th by Governor Baker. At that point, we had already determined as a district that we were going to shut down and go remote for 2 weeks prior to that, only because we started to see our in-district numbers on the rise. And we and have since that time continued to work with our local health agents from the departments of health to really kind of try to forecast where we were going to be at certain periods of time. And at that time, we felt as though with the numbers being high and some of our staffing numbers being high too, that going remote, for those 2 weeks in March might be able to, kind of flatten those numbers, not knowing at the time where this thing was going. We were so early on and not any of us really knowing what the whole ramifications were of how the pandemic was going to play out. So basically, we really depended upon a lot of guidance from the state at that point, mostly through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education through Commissioner Riley. And at that point, the governor had decided to remain the year remote throughout the Commonwealth. And then in June of 2002, on June 25th, Commissioner Riley came out with about a 250-page document of guidance where we had to do some planning on the three models, whether to stay fully remote, go hybrid, or full in person. We did our space assessment. We realized that we could not bring back all of our students into our sites based upon, at that time, the 3-foot minimum that DESE was requiring, even though CDC was recommending the 6-foot. One thing that folks have to continue to remember is that we're down a 1,000-person school down on 500 South Street. So that really impacted our ability to come back at full in person. We felt as though we could do it within the hybrid model, and that's basically what we planned for. We realized, however, that was going to be a situation for parents because within the hybrid model, it was going to be basically 2 days of in-person instruction and 3 days remote. So a lot of planning had to go into that, a lot of public relations and communicating that plan to the communities at large had to go into that. And I think we did a really good job of communicating that. Initially, I think it was working to the point where what a hybrid model would provide you, nothing's going to ever take the place of in-person brick and mortar schooling. Over time, we realized some of the gaps and deficiencies within the hybrid model, tried to do the best we could to remedy those, on the fly. But looking at, where we currently are in terms of a possible return for our elementary students come April 5th, we are very excited about that because we realize that, especially the younger populations, the remote learning side of it, from an age appropriateness standpoint, is detrimental to those populations. So we're looking to bring those students back April 5th. We're in the planning of that. And, our hope is to eventually bring back our middle and high school. And the grand plan is to return in the fall with a full reentry in-person model.
Mr. Dunn, I want to bring you in here because watching the town council meetings, really since the start of this pandemic, one thing you pointed out was the fact that the town never really shut down. Granted, employees went from in-person to remote. They did take remote phone calls, but really the town didn't fully shut down. As a town manager, how important was it to keep business going because bills still have to be paid, processes still have to be accomplished in town?
No, that's a good question, John. And I think we made a very concerted effort to make sure that we could keep our operations going. And as the superintendent pointed out, back a year ago, literally a year ago, it was a whole different world. We didn't know what was going to happen. We had no idea what the future would hold. In fact, if you remember, people hunkered down in their homes. Cars weren't on the street. People were being told, don't go out unless you absolutely have to go to the grocery store, stay home, wash your hands, don't interact with people. Some of that still is in effect today. But I think it's a little bit different world. People have learned how to take precautions and still go about, a lot of their daily lives, whether it's a work life or social life or what have you. I think they've understood what precautions they need to take. So the world has sort of kept moving. But at the time, if you remember, things were just absolutely frozen. I remember literally a year ago bringing every department in to the meeting room down the hall from me and saying, look, we don't know what's going to happen, but here's what your department has to do to make sure that we keep things running, whether it be make sure we provide clean water, make sure the sewer runs, make sure that bills get paid, make sure that we can accept tax payments, make sure that we can do all the things that we normally would do if we were actually inside the building. So at that point, we told everybody to go home. The very fortunate thing for us was that we had spent a fair amount of money making sure that we had the technology in place. Obviously, we didn't know, what a pandemic was going to be and what kind of impact that would have. But we were in a position to be able to be quite flexible. So for the most part, sent people home. We were able to, give them the technology to bring home in order for them to do their jobs. And we had a lot of planning at the time around making sure things as simple, you would think as simple as who's going to pick up the mail? How's the mail going to be handled? Back then, if you remember, mail was being quarantined for 24, 48 hours before anybody could touch it. So I think some of those fears have abated, obviously, but back then that was a big deal. We didn't even know how to treat the mail. So we created systems. We had a multiple day quarantine period for the mail. We make sure we segregate it, and then we assign certain staff to actually open the mail and make sure that it could be scanned and delivered to people that are working remotely. So we went through a lot of planning in order to get to that point. And since then, we've continued to build on our technology. So we have the ability now to have remote meetings. We can have a mix of remote and in-person meetings. We can have people all over the country join in one meeting very simply via Zoom or Teams, Microsoft Teams. So we've got multiple ways to communicate that we didn't even fathom a year ago. I think most people, maybe less than 1% of the population knew what Zoom was a year ago, and look at us now. It's almost become a noun, verb, adjective, adverb. It's common use everywhere. So we've learned a lot of lessons, obviously, along the way. But very fortunately for us, we had invested in a fair amount of technology. And quite honestly, I think we are one of the very few towns, as I've said before, one of the very few towns that didn't skip a beat. We could keep on going and make sure that the taxpayers could get the services that they needed. We also decided back then we were going to keep very careful logs about incoming calls. We adjusted and improved our phone system so that we can take calls virtually anywhere in the world through laptops. But we also made sure that we had call logs and visitor logs to the extent that people were in the building during the last year to make sure that we knew how long it took to satisfy a taxpayer request and respond to a taxpayer phone call. So we kept careful eye on that. But as superintendent said, our staff, really, really proud of them during the course of this entire pandemic, because they really, to a person, have really stepped up and made sure that the services that we provide, we can provide as best as possible.
And again, my thanks to BR Superintendent Derek Swenson and Town Manager Michael Dutton for taking the time to join the show. You can watch the full interview on our BTV Access Facebook page or on our YouTube page. Again, just search BTV Access Corporation. In 1984, Leonard Cohen wrote a song titled Hallelujah. In Hebrew, the word means to rejoice in praising God, but the song adds another layer of meaning. It's a song of broken love, true love remembered and mourned, guilt, penance, and finding peace. This past year has impacted many people in many ways, and we will remember the impacts of the past year, but we continue hope to return back to normal soon. We leave you today with a special performance from Central Square Congregational Church.
I took the name in vain. I don't even blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter what you heard, the holy or the broken. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I've told the truth,